Hello, everyone. Marilyn Bradford here, and I'd like to talk with you about two topics that seem disparate and disconnected: addiction, mental health, and travel. You wouldn't think they would have anything in common, but they actually do. I was fortunate enough in my childhood to travel a lot because my dad was a field geologist. And that meant I spent childhood summers in Montana, and I spent 2 years in Italy when I was 4 and when I was 14. And in 14, I was in a private boarding school in Switzerland. So what does that have to do with mental health and addiction? Well, one of the things I've discovered as a psychotherapist for 37 years and founder of Right Recovery is a great deal of mental health and addiction comes from being very constricted and having this tiny life. Because think about it. You put a being like this in a box like this, and what happens? They're frustrated, they're bored, they don't know what to do, they can't make life work. So they go to a substance or a behavior, and that is their way to disconnect from their tiny little box. Well, here's another way to disconnect from your tiny little box. Come back to you and start traveling. Why? Because traveling will expand your life, your living, your possibilities. I remember the first time I went to India in my 20s, it was actually to go see this guru, but I traveled around a little bit. And there weren't very many Americans even at the ashram. And I learned so much from seeing other cultures. Oh, you can look at food this way. You can look at bodies this way. You can have this view of the universe. And that was definitely true also in my trips to Italy. Now, when I was 4, I don't know how much difference it made, but I went to an Italian-speaking nursery school. So I had to adjust. Oh, there's a whole new language here. Okay. And fortunately, I didn't keep my tiny little box of who I decided I was. I made friends with other Italian 4-year-olds, which was awesome. And then later at 14 at this boarding school, I mean, we had people from all over the world. Some of them would show up in their Rolls Royces, and we would show up in our little Volkswagen Bug, but that didn't matter. I learned so much. I learned that different cultures could really not just include your ideas, but you could include their ideas. You could have interesting discussions about anything, families, politics, whatever it was. And you could all be friends, even if you had different points of view. I also learned that just because someone's rich doesn't mean they're necessarily happier than you are, and that we all have our stuff. That's kind of one universal thing. But the more you stay in your tiny box of your culture, of whatever that is, particularly in the US, even in the US, we have these very specific, there's California, there's conservative Texas, there's Florida, there's the Midwest where you eat hot dishes, there's New England where my family came on the Mayflower. There are all these little tiny cultural boxes. And people who never leave those areas never change and never have, in general, very fulfilling lives. And it's hard because people who live in tiny boxes have very strict points of view and are not open to hearing anything else. And that's what makes government and politics so difficult, is that you have a lot of people who are so close-minded, nothing else can get in there. Now, I'm not saying that there are other ways other than travel to get out of your box. For some people, it's reading a lot, reading about other cultures, or making a point if there are other cultures in their neighborhood, maybe immigrants, or just, I happen to live in Santa Fe, New Mexico, and there are a lot of different cultures here because there's a lot of native population. They're the descendants of the Spanish who came up, the Jews who moved in early on to do the finances, Anglos like myself who just found it was really awesome. place to live. It's so beautiful. Artists from all over the world. So I'm very fortunate to have different people from different cultures with different points of view who, generally speaking, are willing to share them. But I encourage you all, if you'd like to get out of your tiny box, just take a step. Even if you just go to another culture within your country. But, try something different. Try hearing a different point of view. Now, I haven't really dwelled on the mental health and addiction part of this, but from my experience, having a tiny box is what keeps people trapped in both of them, because they have no other way to look at things, to be aware of things. And it's like they have 27 choices. You get outside your box and all of a sudden you have, oh my gosh, 100 choices. And then you have 1,000 possibilities. And you can choose from this, and you can choose from this, and you can see it from this way. It's like expanding who you be. So please give yourself the gift of travel. Thank you.